Mel Gibson, Danny Glover.
Come on, let's go, Raj.
Oh, no, we shouldn't go.
Let's go. Come on, Raj. Don't be a killjoy. Come on, we're back. We're bad. You're black. I'm mad.
Oh, man. Hey, listen. If we're going, shouldn't I have a gun?
No.
Now, get ready for something lethal.
I'm surprised you haven't heard about me. You know, I got a bad reputation, and sometimes I just go nuts like now.
Because the magic
Gun!
is back.
March out the window! You all right, man?
Yeah, I'm okay. Where were you, man? You're my partner or what? Why didn't you follow me down?
Yeah, why didn't you follow him down? Shut up! I'm 7 floors up!
Lethal Weapon 2.
You go first. I'm really Joe for this.
You go first. I'll cover you. Eeny, miny.
Hey, look!
Good police work, officer.
Come on.
No.
Back to my place. Hey, I'll even cook.
Lucky. I have to live with that.
You're not gonna make it.
I'm gonna make it.
You know, there's not enough room.
You were right, you know. Yeah, there wasn't enough room.
Lethal Weapon 2. This time, they're not taking any crap.
Just get off me, man. I don't want anybody to see us like that.
Now, of course, the first Lethal Weapon 2 years prior to this was a major hit for Warner Brothers, and it also redefined the action cop comedy genre for pretty much the rest of all time. And so when Lethal Weapon 2 came out, there was a lot of high expectations, and it exceeded a lot of expectations. It went on to become a huge hit for the studio. It became one of those rare sequels that actually makes much more money than its predecessor did. I think Lethal Weapon 1 only made about, I think, around $67 million domestically, while this one made $150 million domestically during a summer which was already jam-packed with sequels all around. This one was a huge hit for Warner Brothers, and of course it was a big hit critically and financially. Even though a lot of people did complain that the movie did have a little bit of sequelitis to it, but at the same time, they actually did a lot more with the sequel that I think a lot of people give it credit for. I mean, this movie really is a ton of fun. Like, it's a good, fun action comedy sequel. Like, it's a fun movie to watch all around. You got Mel Gibson and Danny Glover reuniting and working their chemistry once again. Richard Donner directing this once again. The action sequences are still very well done. The comedy is still very well done. The new additions to the cast, like Joe Pesci in this, is very well done in this movie. It's just a fun movie. Like, right from the get-go, the movie just tells you what you're in for, and you're having the time of your life watching this car chase that starts the movie off. And it's just a ton of fun to watch all around. Like, the action sequences in this movie are phenomenal. This has some of the best action sequences in the entire series, in my personal opinion. Like, the opening car chase scene, there's a car chase in the middle of the movie that takes place on a mountaintop. The end of the movie where Murtaugh takes out the bad guy, and the bad guy goes, diplomatic immunity, and then Murtaugh just shoots him anyway, and he's just like, it's just been revoked. Like, you know, stuff like that is a ton of fun. I also like how dark it actually kind of gets. There are some moments in here that are actually pretty intense for what you'd expect from a movie like this. And I like that they kind of up the ante here. This is what a good action sequel should do. It should up the ante, up these characters' situations and dilemmas, expand on their characters pretty much, because you do get more into the backstory of Riggs' life. And yeah, it's just a great movie all around. I had a really good time watching this movie. Every time I watch it, it's a great sequel. I won't say it's better than the first one, because I think the first one is still probably the best of the series, but this is just as good. I really like this movie a lot. I would say watch it if you got a chance to, but if you haven't seen it already, but chances are you probably have already. So that's my thoughts on Lethal Weapon 2. Now let's go on to the other big hit that really took a lot of people by surprise. It's another one of those movies that has a premise that's so stupid, so ridiculous that you would never think it would work, and then lo and behold, boom, Weekend at Bernie's.
Uncovered a $2 million error. We're going to be heroes. We're going up the corporate ladder. It appears as if somebody's trying to defraud the company.
Somebody tried to smoke it past the wrong guy.
Very, very good work. How would you two like to come to my house at the beach?
Love to.
For Larry and Richard,
How are you?
this is a place to die for.
You have to kill them, Vito.
A little rusty, but it'll come back to me.
What? Should we just walk in?
But what they don't realize
No, we'll stand out here all weekend. Come on, we're out yet.
is while they're checking in,
Forget the accident with the two guys. Take care of Lomax.
Bernie Lomax will be checking out.
Oh my God! What kind of a host invites you to his house for the weekend and dies on you?
I don't know.
Lomax told whoever he's talking to not to kill us if he's around, right?
Yeah, but Lomax is dead. He's not around anybody anymore.
I know that. You know that. Nobody else knows that. Huh? Oh! Where's Bernie? It looks good enough. Let's go. Uh-oh. Larry, what? Huh?
Really?
Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?
Ooh, Bernie, you animal, you insatiable.
Doesn't anyone realize he's dead?
Blow the boat! Got it? On the boat!
Kino, I'm telling you, Lomax is alive. Maybe Paulie is rustier than we thought.
Ooh, Bernie, you're starting to peel. What do you think you let us on, huh? Oh, is that the killer? How do I know, Richard? Should I stop and ask him? No, just drive. Serpentine! Did you hear something? What is that? It's just burning.
Weekend at Bernie's.
This is actually the director Ted Kochev's second movie that came out in 1989. We already looked at his first one, Winter People. I already checked that out on a previous episode. I'll put a link to that one up at the top, up at the corner here. But this movie, Weekend at Bernie's, was not only much more successful, but I'm not gonna lie, it's actually a lot funnier than I think we gave it credit for. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like the first Mannequin. It's one of those movies where you don't think it's gonna work at all. It's gonna be a huge disaster, and yet when you watch it, there's this strange charm about it that actually does kind of work. And I think this I think Weekend at Bernie's obviously is a much better movie than Mannequin is, and I think it's because they know how stupid this is. They know how stupid this plot is. They know how ridiculous this premise is going to be, and yet somehow it still works regardless of what you really think about it. It's one of those movies that it definitely grows with time. When you really look at it, it has definitely grown into time. I think Entertainment Weekly described it once as being something that has aged into something close to respectability, and the fact that the movie remains popular even to this very day, like, it tells you a lot, man. Like, it's not, this isn't like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or Earth Girls Are Easy, but it's fun for what it is. Like, it's a fun movie. I like watching Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman work off each other. I like that Terry Kaiser is just having the time of his life playing this dead guy for much of the movie. And I like this idea that nobody even suspects that that Bernie is a dead guy, and he's just moving around so much. I like some of the ridiculous ways that they try to make it seem like that Bernie is still alive. And it's like, it's ridiculous, it's silly, but it actually kind of works. Like, it's weird. It's a weird sort of thing with these. There were a lot of these movies back in the 80s. These movies that should not work because of their premise whatsoever, and yet here we are with another one here, and it actually does kind of work. So, yeah, Weekend at Bernie's. Like, it's one of those movies that you think, it was a hit at the time, it's going to be dated now, it's going to be quickly forgettable, and yet it isn't. Like, it's one of those movies that, I won't say it's a masterpiece, I won't say it's one of the greatest comedies of all time, but it's a lot funnier than I think we gave it a lot of more credit for. So, if you haven't seen Weekend at Bernie's, I'd say definitely check it out for yourself. I think you might be pleasantly surprised if you go in with the right note. If you go into this movie thinking that if you go into this movie accepting that it's going to be stupid, it's going to be ridiculous, it's going to be over the top, I think you can definitely get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I know I certainly did. So, that's my thoughts on Weekend at Bernie's. By the way, this guy's directing credits are very interesting. Like, he's done comedies like Fun with Dick and Jane. He also did Switching Channels and Folks, which we'll get to in 92. But he also did movies like North Dallas 40, The First Blood, and yeah, just a really interesting film, just a really interesting filmography from this guy, Ted Kochev. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Weekend at Bernie's.
James Bond. He's used to getting what he wants. this time, he wants revenge. His bad side is a dangerous place to be. Timothy Dalton is James Bond in License to Kill.
So as I said, License to Kill was the second and last film starring Timothy Dalton as James Bond. And honestly, I thought Timothy Dalton was actually a pretty good James Bond. I like where they were going with these movies. I like that they were taking more of a darker approach to these movies, especially with this one in particular. I actually think a lot of Casino Royale took a lot from this movie. In fact, I think a lot of the Daniel Craig movies eventually became took a lot from what the Timothy Dalton movies were trying to do. But unfortunately, like I said, this movie didn't do so well at the box office. When you're in a very crowded summer where you still have Indiana Jones playing, you still have Ghostbusters 2, you still have Batman, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Lethal Weapon 2, these big hits, something unfortunately is going to have to give. And unfortunately, James Bond was one of the movies that had to give, so it quickly went away. I actually really like these movies, like I said. I like the Timothy Dalton movies. I like that they did go for a much darker approach than the movies that have come before that. Like, the Roger Moore movies just got sillier and sillier with every passing film. I like that they took this new approach. I just wish that they would have made that third film to make me... Maybe if they made that third film, they would have had a reason to keep this series with Dalton afloat. But at the same time, I'm glad they took the... I'm kind of glad that it unfortunately did not succeed at the box office, because it eventually led to the Pierce Brosnan movies, which we'll get to those in 6 years when we get to that movie. But yeah, this movie, it also had a hard time selling itself. Like, you saw the trailer. That's a typical James Bond trailer. You've got the James Bond music, you got the clips of everything but then you have this other trailer that has a much more darker approach to it, and doesn't feel like a James Bond movie, which is both kind of a good thing and a bad thing. I think people wanted to see more of a James Bond movie. I think they liked what they saw with The Living Daylights. They thought that would continue with this, but like I said, stiff competition from most of the summer blockbusters kind of unfortunately caused this movie not to do well. Even though they were going to make a third movie in '90, and they had some other directors involved, like John Landis was in talks at one point, so was Ted Kochev. I can't remember some of the other names off the top of my head, but they were going to make a third James Bond movie with Timothy Dalton, but unfortunately that never went anywhere because MGM kept putting it in development hell, production kept getting pushed back, and so they just left it go for a while, and then they eventually decided to redo it again, this time with Pierce Brosnan. But like I said, we'll get to those ones when we get to those ones, but yeah, I do like this movie a lot. I do like this movie. I like The Living Daylights a lot. I like this one very much. I think it definitely deserves a lot more credit than I think it has gotten. Like I said, I think a lot of what Daniel Craig's Bond movies eventually would become took a lot of inspiration from these movies. They did a lot better, but I think this movie was putting itself in the right direction. I'd say definitely give these movies another chance. Like the Timothy Dalton movies, like I said, The Living Daylights, License to Kill, I think you could give these movies another chance. I think you will definitely find that there was more to these movies than meets the eye. So that's my thoughts on License to Kill. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, which is another Disney re-release, and that is the re-release of Peter Pan.
Coming this summer from Walt Disney Pictures, Peter Pan is back.
Here we go!
Walt Disney's all-time hero is back in movie theaters.
You can fly!
Back in the adventure of a lifetime. Back to face the most notorious, uproarious Disney villain of all.
Yep, it's Hook all right.
I touch her this time, Pan. There was a fun for everyone. It's treasured by the town.
This is your last chance.
This is the wonderful story of the boy who never grew up and his high-flying adventures with Wendy, John, Michael, Nana, Tiger Lily, the Lost Boys, and everyone's favorite heroine, the magical, mischievous Tinkerbell.
A pixie. Amazing.
A jealous female can be tricked into anything.
Peter Pan will save us.
I'll get you for this, Pan, if it's the last thing I do.
This summer, take off for adventure.
Wait for the leader, the leader, the leader.
Take off for fun. Take off
And where do you think you are going?
on a classic Disney voyage.
Here we go!
Take off with Peter Pan. Only at a theater near you.
Yeah, Peter Pan's one of those Disney animated movies that I didn't see when I was a kid a lot. I did remember a lot of the scenes from when I used to watch the sing-along songs videos and used to see the songs put on those tapes. But I hadn't seen the full movie until probably around when Return to Neverland came out, around 2001, 2002. And I just watched it again recently when Disney Plus came out. I rewatched all the Disney animated movies again. This movie really does hold up for me. I think a lot of it really does hold up. I like the voice cast very, very much. I thought the music was very good. I like the comedy in this movie. The comedy in this movie is absolutely hilarious. The animation is always great. It's classic Disney animation. And yeah, it's one of those movies that I'm glad to see does hold up well over time. Like I said, I didn't see it back when I was little, but now that I've seen it as a grown-up, it still very much holds up to this very day. And I'm glad to see that it's not one of those movies that it actually, like I said, it does hold up better as time goes on. I like a lot of the animation. I like the music. I like the comedy. I mean, there's not really much more I can say about it. It's a classic Disney movie, and you can see why. It's a great, fun adventure film, and still, honestly, the best Peter Pan movie we've ever gotten. I mean, the only one that I think comes close has been Steven Spielberg's Hook, but even that had its problems to it. But as always, we'll get to that when we get to Hook in '91. But that's my thoughts on Peter Pan. Let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and that is Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan in the romantic comedy When Harry Met Sally.
Men and women can't be friends, because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
So you're saying that a man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive?
No, you pretty much want to nail him, too. Grab?
No, I don't like to eat between meals.
I'll roll down the window. A faceless guy rips off your clothes, and that's the sex fantasy you've been having since you were 12. Exactly the same.
Well, sometimes I vary it a little.
Which part?
What I'm wearing.
You tell her about other women.
Yeah. Like the other night. I made love to this woman, and it was so incredible. I took her to a place that wasn't human. She actually meowed.
You made a woman meow?
Are you comfortable?
Sure. I need to talk.
What happened? What's the matter?
Harry came over last
I went over
night
to Sally's last night.
because I was upset that Joe was getting
And one
married.
thing led to
And
another.
before I knew it, we were kissing,
Make
and
a long
then
story short,
we did it.
They dated.
challenge,
I'm difficult. I'm too structured. I'm completely closed off.
but in a good way.
And I'm gonna be 40.
When?
Someday.
In 8 years.
It's not the same for men. Charlie Chaplin had babies when he was 73.
Yeah, but he was too old to pick them up.
Directed by Rob Reiner, this came out 2 years after The Princess Bride came out in '87, and it really cemented Rob Reiner's success level as a filmmaker. He had been on a roll with these hit movies, This Is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, the aforementioned Princess Bride, and now this movie, which I really think is a cinematic masterpiece. This is really one of the great romantic comedies of all time. It's interesting that Billy Crystal actually thought this movie would flop because of the fact that, like I said before, a lot of the movies coming out were going up against these huge blockbusters, Indiana Jones, Batman, Lethal Weapon 2, so on and so forth. So they decided to do the platform method, which is basically opening it in select cities, mostly in New York and LA, and then letting the word of mouth garner enough interest so they can expand it in coming weeks. And sure enough, a week after this movie came out, the movie actually did pretty well on its opening weekend, grossing about $9 million, and it was still in under 1,000 theaters, and eventually went on to gross more than $92 million, which is way more above its $16 million budget. And you can definitely see why the movie caught on. This movie really is a very good romantic comedy. You can buy into the chemistry between Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. The dialogue works really well. This is Nora Ephron writing. Usually she usually can never really do bad. There have been times when she's done some movies that have not been as good, but most of the time she's been pretty solid. And this is definitely one of her strongest works. Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher are also in this movie, playing the friends of Harry and Sally. And this relationship that they have in this movie is just, it feels realistic. It feels genuine. Like, you don't ever feel like this is being forced onto you. Like, you have to like these people. But, no, you like these people because they are generally likable people. And, of course, you have, like, great moments like the restaurant scene, which, if you go to that restaurant in Manhattan, they still have a sign that says, "Hope you had what she had. Enjoy." And it's literally hanging above the sign where that table was, the table where that scene was shot at. So, again, not really much more I can say about this one. I think a lot of people have already seen this movie, and I think a lot of people can agree it's one of the best romantic comedies ever made. So, not much more to say. When Harry Met Sally, it's a true classic. If you haven't seen it already, I'd say definitely check it out.
Guns don't kill people. Adding.
Channel 62 has the lowest ratings in the history of television. What they need is a new station manager.
No, not him. Forget it. No way.
A man of action. A man of courage. A man of vision.
What's your name? Billy. Billy what?
What they get is a man so desperate, he'll put anyone on the air.
Hey, Stanley,
Yeah, George?
how would you like your own TV show?
Okay.
You get the drink from the fire hose! Okay, ready? Open wide!
He's Conan, the librarian.
Today we're teaching poodles how to fly.
We beat out the networks.
George Newman. He starts where the others stop.
We're the #1 station in town.
Orion Pictures presents Weird Al Yankovic in UHF.
Now, Weird Al Yankovic had already been a household name by this point, and so there was a lot of high expectations for UHF. There was a lot of expectation that this movie was going to be a big hit, a big sleeper hit, kind of like the next Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But this is Orion Pictures, and this was around the time when Orion Pictures was really falling into hard times. They would still be, like, winning awards, Academy Awards for Best Picture and all that, but their financial fortunes were unfortunately not as successful as they would have hoped they would have been, and they were expecting a lot for this movie to do very well. It scored very well with test audiences. It's not really a critical movie, because this movie did not do very well critically either. And then when you add in the fact that you've got Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Lethal Weapon 2, Batman, License to Kill, When Harry Met Sally, Do the Right Thing, and Weekend at Bernie's all around the same time, yeah, this is going to cut into the box office potential for this movie. And unfortunately, the film did not do so well at the box office. It also kind of dinged Weird Al Yankovic for a little bit. He actually fell into a little bit of a slump. He usually was putting out albums every year or every other year. It took him like 3 years to get back on track until he did his next album, which was basically a parody of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. I love Weird Al Yankovic. I mean, I think he's still one of the funniest and most brilliant musicians out there. And this movie is pretty friggin' amazing. Like, this is a hilarious movie. I'm disappointed that it didn't have the strong following at first, but it did have the big following afterwards. I mean, this is a really funny, silly movie. This was really a movie that should have been... This is just what you'd expect from a Weird Al Yankovic movie. It's very funny, very silly, very over-the-top, very creative, and just downright silly. Just downright fun, downright over-the-top. It's just everything you could expect from a movie from Weird Al Yankovic, and it's just... not much more I can say about it, man. It's a classic movie. I'm glad it has found an audience over time. I'm glad that Weird Al Yankovic continues to still be as funny and as creative and as inventive as he has been. Even after this movie came out, this movie is just a great, great film. If you haven't seen UHF and you love Weird Al Yankovic, you gotta see this movie. I can't recommend this movie enough. UHF is a great film. Moving on to the second movie of the two that we're looking at today, we have Shag the movie.
They were the last days of innocence.
She all think Carson Holly had premarital sex.
Elena, gross.
For a country.
Oh, this is awful, man. I mean, look at the guy's face. He's desperate.
For a generation.
Have you ever Frenched a girl in the ear?
Yes.
My God, Chip, who'd you do this with?
Nobody.
For 4 best friends who wanted it to last. Forever.
I love y'all so much. Y'all are going off to college. And you're going to forget me. She's wrecked her face.
Because for one weekend in the summer of '63, you could still trust your heart.
I'm not going anywhere with you.
Well, don't play hard to get. You might miss something.
Take a chance.
What am I gonna do? I love him so much I feel sick. Follow your heart. I want him to take me in his arms and crush me with passion.
And make a dream come true.
I know you're going to be very happy. And if you're not, there's always divorce.
Elena! You don't know me. You don't love me. Sure as all damn don't want to marry me, so why don't you leave me the hell alone?
I don't think I can.
I'm wild. Yes, I've been wild all along. I just didn't know it till now.
Way out.
And way out of control.
Turn on the radio!
I was standing on the corner when I heard my bulldog bark. He was barking at the 2 men who was arguing in the dark. And I staggered in, and Billy took first stagger's leg. He said, "You did me wrong, Billy, and that's one thing that I hate." Look out there!
Shag. A great time you'll remember forever.
Yeah, so judging by this trailer, you can pretty much kind of predict what this movie is going to be. It's a coming-of-age story. Takes place in 1963. You're following these 4 high school girls going off to spring break in Myrtle Beach. And you're going to see them getting into a lot of crazy misadventures and also learn a little about themselves and grow up in front of our eyes. That's pretty much what you get here. The biggest problem I think this movie overall has is that the script is kind of generic. But in a way, I still kind of enjoy this movie, largely because of the actresses they have here. These are 4 very good actresses working with the material here, and I think they really up the movie to another level because of how good the performances are. You got Bridget Fonda, you got Phoebe Cates, you got Annabeth Gish, you got Paige Hanna. You like these characters a lot. You can relate to these people as they go through this adventure throughout the course of the film. Like I said, the biggest problem I have with the movie is that the script is just kind of... It's okay. It could have been a lot better. It's co-written... The co-writer of this was Terry Sweeney, who was on SNL for a little bit, and Robin Secord, who would go on to write movies like Matilda and Memoirs of a Geisha. So some of the movies I can think of at the top of my head right now. But, I mean, the movie does a good job recreating 1963 in 1989. And, yeah, I think the performances in this movie really do stand out more than the actual script does. I think the script just needed something a little bit more to make it kind of stand out on its own. It's obviously trying to be like another American Graffiti, but it just doesn't have that same spark that American Graffiti had that made that movie stand out on its own. So, yeah, Shag, decent film, good performances carry it over. Could have been a lot better if the script had been a little bit more clever, a little bit more smarter. But for what the movie is, it's perfectly fine for what it is. I'd say definitely check it out if you got the time to.
Scott Turner had finally found the girl of his dreams.
Oh, God, a woman in my house.
He finally had the perfect relationship.
So you'll be staying another night?
Oh, yes, of course!
When something big happened to change it. Something called hooch.
Wait, whoa! No!
You don't know much about dogs, do you?
This is not my dog.
Now he's being swept off his feet and dragged all over town.
What are you doing to this dog?
Oh, I'll just pay him for what?
All in the name of love.
This dog loves you, boy.
Touchstone Pictures presents Tom Hanks as a man who'll beg,
Don't need the car! Get the car!
who'll bargain,
Not touching the water, the orange juice, crab apple. What am I supposed to do? Make you a margarita?
who'll pay any price.
97.51. What? It's
Is that pesos? This is for a dog.
He'll take care of your house. You're lucky to have him.
No! What have you done?
A man who will do anything humanly possible to get the dog out of his bed.
Oh, that's it. I'm getting my gun.
And the girl back in his life.
I don't have room for a dog like Hooch.
Not many people do.
Oh, no! You're in my house.
Turner and Hooch.
Turner and Hooch, of course, comes a year after Tom Hanks broke out big time with the movie Big. I think this was probably his third or fourth film since then, I think. Because he had Punchline in 88, he had The Burbs earlier this year, and now he has Turner and Hooch here. And, you know, comparing this to K-9, this is definitely the better movie, largely because you got Tom Hanks in here, and I think Tom Hanks obviously is a better actor than Jim Belushi. But I like his chemistry with the dog in this movie. It's a very generic, very silly comedy that you kind of see where it's going to go. It has a lot of similarities to K-9 in terms of its plot and everything, but I think it does its job a little bit better than K-9 does, and I think that works because you have Tom Hanks here instead of Jim Belushi, and you like the chemistry between Hanks and the dog in this one better than you do with the dog in K-9 and Jim Belushi. I really don't know if I have anything more to say about that. It's just like I feel like this one was the better movie overall compared to K-9. K-9 wasn't a bad movie per se, but I feel like this movie had a lot more going for it, and they did have more that worked in this movie than they did in K-9. So, yeah, I like this movie a lot. I like Turner and Hooch a lot. They actually tried to do a sequel to this with Biff from Back to the Future in the Turner role, and the dog from this movie in that, which did not turn out very well. It was like an NBC TV pilot, and then you never heard of it again. And after that, but they did do the recent show on Disney Plus, with Josh Peck, and I gotta admit, it was actually pretty fun. It was a pretty fun show. Unfortunately, I don't think it's gonna get another season, which is a shame because I feel like I thought it was an overall decent show, and I think they could have really upped the game with another season. But hey, we got that show on Disney Plus that works well, and this movie works well enough as it is. Those are my real honest thoughts on Turner and Hooch. There's nothing really more to say about it. It doesn't really do anything that's groundbreaking or anything, but it is still a very enjoyable movie. So, let's move on to the next movie, and that is Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, New York has a new problem.
Yeah, I had to trim some of that trailer down because really, most of that trailer for Friday the 13th Part 8 is just basically the back of Jason looking at New York City. I mean, it was literally a minute of just that. So I cut it off near the tail end, just showed you the little bit there at the end. And honestly, that's pretty much the best way to describe the movie itself, because we don't really get to New York until the final third act of the movie. And even then, when Jason ends up in Manhattan, he really doesn't do a whole lot in this movie. That's not only is the title very misleading because most of the movie is spent far away from Manhattan until the third act. Nothing really happens when we actually get to New York. It's really a major letdown of a movie, and this is from a series that pretty much recycles the same thing over and over again. But at least with the Friday the 13th movies before this, they were a little more clever in the way they killed people. I mean, yeah, they were pretty much the same stock characters, but at the same time, you still got more variety to the kills in this movie. And this one is just like, they're on a boat for most of the movie, and then they get to New York, and New York and they don't really do anything in New York. It really is just like, Jason's in New York. That's our movie. Bye. No kill. It's hardly any kills. There's nothing really all that exciting in this. And, yeah, this movie killed Friday the 13th for a little bit. Like, this was the last movie they had made, because there was a point where between 80 and 89, there was like 8 different Friday the 13th movies, and most of them were coming out one every year, because they kept making money for the studio, even though Paramount didn't want to make any more. So I feel like this movie probably they made this probably to just stop the series completely, because they were so done with this series. Although I did hear that it's because that the budget was so small, they didn't have enough time to film all the stuff they wanted to in New York, so the movie the movie basically just came out really ugly, and like it doesn't really fit to the title of the movie. The title is Jason Takes Manhattan. The promos are all of Jason hovering over New York City, slicing the I Love New York sign. He even went on the Arsenio Hall show in costume to promote this movie, and it's just like, you went to all this trouble and for this to be as bad as it was. That says a lot about this series, because this series just only gets worse and worse from here. But wow, what a mess this is. This is a wasted opportunity of a movie that could have been so much more. I mean, A Nightmare on Elm Street had a new movie that came out this year, and that did so much more with its premise and ideas, but we'll get to that one when we get to that one. So, that's my thoughts on Jason Takes Manhattan. It's not very good, but, let's move on to the next movie, and our next movie is Babar the Movie, which I didn't even know got a theatrical release, to be honest with you.
Babar is back.
Did you hear that, fellas? We're in the presence of royalty.
So get ready for a regal adventure.
At dawn we march for the elephant land. We shall rule.
We're gonna take action.
Don't miss the world television premiere of Babar the Movie tonight.
Yeah, like, this is a movie I remember watching a lot when I was a little kid. We used to have the tape around my house all the time, and I used to watch it every once in a while, and yeah, I had no idea this was actually a theatrical release. Like I said, I used to watch it on video, used to watch it on the Disney Channel when it was on every once in a while. This movie does hold a special place in my heart, because I remember watching this a lot when I was a little kid, and yeah, it's still kind of it still looks kind of like the same kind of fun that I remember having with it when I was a little kid. I haven't watched it in a long time, but it definitely looks like the budget on this was much higher than the TV series was, and it looks like it's because I do like the idea that they're setting this is basically a prequel to the TV series that was going on at the time, even though this serves as the season finale of the series at the time, and yeah, it still looks like a nicely animated movie that still kind of holds up. I want to get a chance to watch it again at some point. I need to find like a good copy of it on DVD. I think I can get a DVD copy of this, but it might be a little bit hard to find. But if I do find it, I'll definitely check it out again. I do remember watching this one a lot when I was a little kid, so it was nice looking back and finding that trailer again. You saw not even a trailer, but that Disney Channel promo, but that's my quick thoughts on Babar the Movie. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is
There's no place for you here. Flee, Cometh.
Anything? Here it goes.
Distant Voices Still Lives, a movie that, honestly, I'd never even heard of until right now. But, I will admit, that trailer did show a lot of promise to it. It does look like it has this kind of, like, Godfather-esque type of eyes. It's a period piece movie coming across different generations. It takes place in Liverpool between the 40s and 50s. You got this family going through these different crises going around within this family. It's got a decent cast. Pete Postlethwaite's in it. The visual look of the film looks impressive. But yeah, like I said, I haven't seen this movie before. I didn't even know it even existed, but I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of intrigued by it. I do want to see this at some point, so maybe down the line I might check this one out. This actually does look like a pretty interesting movie. The trailer for this, the full trailer for this looked pretty intriguing and pretty... It's a weird-looking trailer, but in a good kind of weird. Like, one that makes me go like, yeah, this is something I should definitely see at some point. So, whenever I get a chance to, I definitely will try to check this movie out. Distant Voice is still live, so... That's my quick thoughts on that. Let's move on to the last movie here, and it's Catch Me If You Can. And no, this isn't the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. This is a different Catch Me If You Can.
It was a time of slow Mondays, fast Fridays,
That guy is hot.
and face a 90s reality.
Look, the way I see it, if we don't raise all the money right away, the board is going to close the school.
We can do it.
We can do it!
There's no way we can do it.
I got a date.
We need a miracle.
How much?
50%.
That's not fair. 15.
8.
14.
9.
Okay, you win. Just stole $3,000 from your high school, about to bet it on an illegal car race. Do you think they have nerves in prison?
Shut up, Mabel.
Neville, always Neville.
This past weekend, our button sale made a profit of $3,000. This week, our pottery and painting sale made a profit of $24,000.
I smell trouble.
School spirit.
I'm Johnny Fatman. Double or nothing. 20 minutes, run 20 miles. The Twin City Run, you win, you get $200,000.
Will the principal catch on?
What else did you put up for collateral?
Will the students catch the spirit?
Turns red and green.
Will the fat man add a catch?
It ain't over till the fat man sings.
And will Melissa and Malone ever catch each other?
6, 5, 4.
Catch Me If You Can.
This Catch Me If You Can is set around these two high school students and this crazy adventure, illegal. It looks like it's mostly illegal car racing, but there are some intriguing elements here about this movie, even though I've never seen it before. Stephen Sommers, who would later go on to direct The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, this was his first directorial outing. One of the stars in this movie is Grant Heslov, and Grant Heslov, if you know, is one of the main producers behind George Clooney's production company. Emmett Walsh is in this movie. He's been in a ton of movies. But, other than that, this looks like a pretty standard car racing flick. I mean, could have some promise to it. I mean, it doesn't look that terrible, and some of the racing scenes look actually pretty impressive for the time. But, yeah, like I said, I can't really say a whole lot about it. I've never seen it before. Didn't even do that well at the box office, but it has a lot of notable things about it that are worth talking about. So, that's my quick thoughts on Catch Me If You Can.